not empty numbers, but full ones, PKRs. There is one. There is one. Here.
That's why
That's 2.
Why such
That's 3. That's 4.
Why
we may be talking here about 10,000 dead Jews on this one Fahrplanordnung right here.
More than 10,000.
Well, we will be conservative.
Yes. But why such a document is so fascinating, as a matter of fact? Because I was in Treblinka, and to have the two things together, Treblinka and the document.
Well, you see, when I hold a document in my hand, particularly if it's an original document, then I hold something which is actually something that the original bureaucrat had held in his hand. It's an artifact. It's a leftover. It's the only leftover there is.
Yes.
The dead are not around. The Reichsbahn was ready to ship, in principle, any cargo in return for payment. And therefore, the basic key, price-controlled key, was that Jews were going to be shipped to Treblinka, were going to be shipped to Auschwitz-Sobibor or any other destination, so long as the railroads were paid by the track kilometer, so many pfennig per mile. And the basic rate was the same throughout the war, with children under 10 going at half fare, children under 4 going free. And the payment had to be made for only one way. The guards, of course, had to have return fare paid for them because they were going back to their place of origin.
Excuse me, the children who were shipped in the extermination camps, the children under 4
went free.
Had the privilege to be gassed freely.
Yes, transport was free. And in addition to that, because the person who had to pay, the agency that had to pay, was the agency that ordered the train, and that happened to have been the Gestapo, Eichmann's office, because of the financial problem which that office had in making payment, the Reichsbahn agreed on group fare. So the Jews were being shipped in much the same way as any excursion fare would be granted if there were enough people traveling. And the minimum was 400, a kind of charter fare. 400 was the minimum. So even if there were fewer than 400, it would pay to say that there were 400 and in that way get the half fare for adults as well. And that was the basic principle. Now, of course, if there was exceptional filth in the cars, which might be the case, if there was damage to the equipment, which might be the case because the transports took so long and the inmates, to the extent of 5 or 10%, died en route, then there might be an additional bill for that damage. But in principle, so long as payment was being made, transports were being shipped. Sometimes the SS got credit. Sometimes the transport went out before payment because, as you see, the whole business was handled, as in the case of any other charter traffic especially, or any really personal traffic of any kind, through a travel bureau. Mitteleuropäisches Reisebüro would handle some of these transactions, the billing procedure, the ticketing procedure, or if smaller transport was involved, the SS was...
It was the same bureau who was dealing with any kind of normal passenger.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just the official travel bureau. Mitteleuropäisches Reisebüro will ship people to the gas chambers, or they will ship vacationers to their favorite resorts. And that was basically the same office and the same operation, the same procedure, the same billing.
No difference.
No difference whatsoever. And as a matter of course, everybody would do that job as if it were the most normal thing to do.
And it was not a normal job.
No, it was not a normal job. As a matter of fact, you know, even the complicated currency procedures were followed in much the same way as with any other transactions. If borders had to be crossed, then that was very frequent.
For instance?
Well, I think the most interesting example is, of course, Greece. The transports from Saloniki, Greece, in the spring of 1943, involving some 46,000 victims over a considerable distance, so that even with group fare, the bill came to almost 2 million mark, which was quite a sum. And the basic principle, you see, with such traffic is that which is employed in the usual customary way, even to this day, all over the world. One pays in the currency of the place of origin, but then one has to pay the participating railroads en route in their own currencies.
So means that from Saloniki they had to cross Greece.
They had to cross Greece.
Or it was drachmas.
In Greece it was drachma, and then you might have to go through the Serbian and Croatian railroads, and you might have to then go to the Reichsbahn and pay in mark. Now, ironically, the problem was, you see, that the military commander in Saloniki, who was in charge, so he, in a sense, was the ultimate person responsible for paying for these things, didn't have the mark. And he didn't have the Reichsmark, although he did have the drachma. The drachma, you see, he had from the confiscated Jewish property, which was used to pay for these things. This was a self-financing principle. The SS or the military would confiscate the Jewish property, and with proceeds, especially from bank deposits, would pay for transports.
This means that the Jews themselves had to pay for their days.
You have to remember one basic principle. There was no budget for destruction.
Yes.
So that is the reason that the confiscated property had to be used in order to make the payments. All right. The property of the Jews in Saloniki was confiscated, but the proceeds were in local Greek currency. The Reichsbahn, of course, would want payment in mark. How then do you change the drachma into mark? Now you have exchange controllers right within occupied Europe. The only way it could be done, of course, is if somebody in this occupied zone obtained mark. But how could they? This was not such a simple thing in wartime, and therefore, for once, there was a default, and the railroad had shipped all of these Jews to Auschwitz without compensation.
Das Leben von Sonderkommando hängte vielmal ab, ob Transporte zur Vernichtung gekommen sind oder nicht. Wenn mehrere Transporte angekommen sind, war das Sonderkommando vergrößert. Man hatte sie gebraucht, die Sonderkommandos, dann statt die Selektion nicht. Und wenn die Transporte nicht gekommen sind, eine längere Zeit, für Sonderkommando hat es bedeutet eine unmittelbare Vernichtung. Die gewusst haben im Sonderkommando, dass wenn die Transporte nicht kommen würden, dass das praktisch ihre Liquidierung sein wird. Das Sonderkommando lebte in einer ganz extremen Situation. Von unseren Augen sehnten wir täglich wie Tausende und Abertausende von unschuldigen Menschen in den Schornsteinen verschwinden. Wir könnten sehen auf eigene Augen, was der Mensch überhaupt bedeutet. Dass sich niemand dass die Menschen da gekommen sind, die unschuldigen Menschen, Kinder, Frauen, Männer, und so, dass die plötzlich verschwunden sind und die Welt war stumm. Wir fühlten uns verlassen von der Welt, von der Menschheit. Und unter diesen Zuständen könnten wir gerade extrem sehr ein großes Verständnis haben für eine Möglichkeit zur Überlebung. Da wir gesehen haben, und da war, was ein Leben von Menschen ist. Und wir waren überzeugt, dass die Hoffnung ist immer in einem Menschen, bis die Zeit, bis der Mensch lebt. Man soll die Hoffnung nicht aufgeben, bis man lebt. Und so haben wir gekämpft in unserem harten Leben, von Tag zu Tag, von Woche zu Woche, von Monat zu Monat, von Jahr zu Jahr. Mit der Hoffnung, dass es vielleicht doch uns gelingen würde, von dieser Hölle entrinnen zu können.
Zu dieser Zeit, also Januar, Februar, März, kamen fast keine Transporte.
Es war traurig, Treblinka ohne Transporte.
Das möchte ich nicht sagen. Dass die Juden traurig waren, die wurden traurig, weil sie gewusst haben, ja, das muss ich Ihnen extra erzählen. Das ist eine eigene Frage. Gell?
Ja, das ist eine eigene Frage.
Das ist eine eigene Frage, gell?
Ja, ich weiß.
Die Juden, zuerst haben sie geglaubt, die Arbeitsjuden,
Ja.
dass sie überleben werden. Aber als man ihnen im Januar wenig zu essen gab, weil der Herr Wirt gesagt hat, das sind zu viele Arbeitsjuden, das waren 500 oder 600 im Lager 1 unten.
Das war der gerade.
Ja. So hat man denen, damit sie nicht störrisch werden, hat man sie nicht erschossen und auch nicht vergast, sondern man gab ihnen nichts zu essen. Und da tauchten Seuchen auf. Und zwar Typhus, eine Art Typhus. Und von dort an haben die Juden nichts mehr geglaubt, weil man sie verrecken ließ, sterben ließ wie die Fliegen.
Ja.
Da war es vorbei. Da haben sie nichts mehr geglaubt.
Ja.
Da konnten wir sagen, ich habe nur gesagt, wir mussten jeden Tag sagen, ja, ihr werdet weiterleben. Wir haben es fast selber geglaubt. Weil wenn man dauernd liegt, glaubt man es fast selbst. Gell?
Ja.
Aber die haben dann zu mir gesagt, nee, Herr Chef, wir sind nur mehr Leichen auf Urlaub.
Die sogenannte Flaute, wie man es genannt hat, kam im Februar 1943 nach den großen Transporten aus Grodno und Białystok. Und dann war es still. Ab Januar schon, Februar bis März war still, nichts. Sind keine Transporte mehr gekommen.